People think sleep is peaceful, safe, comforting. But sleep is when you're weakest. And I didn't know it at the time, but for 7 long years, the most dangerous place in my life wasn't the street, or the factory, or the dark alley behind our house. It was the bed I shared with my husband. Good evening, sweetheart. My name is Eleanor, and I'm an old woman now. My hands shake a little, my voice cracks sometimes, but my memory. Oh, my memory is sharp as a blade. Tonight, I'm telling a story I buried deep for decades. Not because I forgot it, but because remembering it almost broke me. I grew up in a blink-and-you-miss-it town in Kentucky. One road, one church, one grocery store, and a whole lot of judgment. My daddy worked underground in the mines, coming home covered in coal dust and silence. My mama raised 6 kids with prayers and worn-out hands. Back then, girls like me didn't dream big. We were raised to be quiet, obedient, and useful. School ended early for me, 4th grade, that was it. While my brothers kept studying, I learned how to cook, clean, and survive. At 19, I met Gerald. Church social, folding chairs, weak lemonade. He smiled at me like I was something special. Gerald had a steady job at the textile factory, clean clothes, confident posture. In a town like ours, that made him a big deal. Folks said I'd hit the jackpot when he started coming around. And things moved fast. Real fast. 6 months later, we were engaged. Before I even knew who I was, I became someone's wife. Our house wasn't fancy, but it was ours. Blue paint, white windows, close enough to his job that he could walk if he wanted. I planted flowers out front, sewed curtains by hand, packed his lunch every morning like clockwork. For a while, life felt normal. Almost perfect. We talked about babies, picked names, imagined tiny feet running through the hallway. But the babies never came. I cried over that more than I'll ever admit. Gerald didn't. He said maybe it was for the best. Said we could focus on each other instead. That should have been my first red flag. About 3 years into our marriage, Gerald got promoted. Suddenly, he was working late. Going to business dinners. Taking trips to the city. Chicago. Louisville. Always gone. Always tired. And that's when my body started falling apart. At first, it was small stuff. Stiff fingers in the morning. Achy legs. A weird burning feeling in my muscles. I told myself I was just tired. After all, I did everything in that house by myself. But the pain didn't back off. It leveled up. Some mornings, getting out of bed felt like lifting concrete. My joints screamed. My legs shook. I'd grip the mattress and pray I wouldn't collapse before reaching the kitchen. Gerald told me to see the town doctor. The doctor barely looked at me. He said I was anxious. Bored. Too much time on my hands. Gave me pills and sent me home like I was wasting his time. The pills didn't fix a damn thing. Month by month, I got worse. My hair started coming out in clumps. My nails cracked. My clothes hung off me like they belonged to someone else. Neighbors started whispering. Some crossed the street when they saw me coming. Back then, people didn't even like saying the word cancer. Fear lived everywhere. Gerald. He pulled away. More overtime. Short answers. No patience. When I asked questions, he snapped. You wouldn't get it, he'd say. This is grown man business. Every night ended the same way. He'd walk into the bedroom holding a glass of warm milk and a small pill. Take this, he'd say softly. It'll help you sleep. And I did. Because why wouldn't I? He was my husband. The man who promised to protect me. The man who held my hand in church and smiled for family photos. I didn't know then that each night I swallowed more than medicine. I didn't know that the pain, the weakness, the slow destruction of my body wasn't random. And I had no idea that the truth was closer than I ever imagined. Lying right beside me. Pain is something dangerous to a person. It doesn't just hurt your body. It messes with your head. After a while, you stop asking what's wrong and start asking what's wrong with me. That's where I was. Years passed, and my life shrank down to doctor visits, pill bottles, and bad mornings. The pain wasn't just waking me up anymore, it followed me all day like a shadow that wouldn't back off. Some days, I couldn't even button my dress without my fingers shaking. The doctors. Same story every time. It's stress. It's nerves. It's all in your head. One specialist even said I needed mental rest, like my mind was the problem, not my body slowly breaking down. They handed Gerald prescriptions like candy, sedatives, vitamins, painkillers. A whole pharmacy stuffed into brown paper bags. And every night, like clockwork, Gerald handled my medicine. He'd sit beside me, calm as ever, holding that glass of warm milk. "Here you go, sweetheart," he'd say. "Doctor knows best." I swallowed it. Every time. Because when the whole world tells you you're imagining things, you start believing them. Then something changed. In our neighborhood, a new woman moved in next door. Her name was Mrs. Clark. And let me tell you, she didn't fit in. Not even a little. She wore pants when other women wore dresses. Drove her own car. Smoked cigarettes on her porch while reading thick books. Didn't smile just to make people comfortable. Folks whispered about her like she was trouble. But to me, she felt like air. I started visiting her in the afternoons when Gerald was at work. I didn't even realize how lonely I'd been until someone actually listened to me. And when I told her about my pain, she didn't roll her eyes. She didn't change the subject. She leaned forward. She asked questions. Real ones. How long has this been happening? What makes it worse? What helps? Even a little. No doctor had ever asked me that. One day, she said something that stopped me cold. "Have you noticed any pattern?" That word stuck with me. Pattern. So I started paying attention. I wrote things down. Times. Mornings. Nights. And that's when I saw it. Clear as day. On mornings after Gerald came home late, I felt terrible. Could barely move. But on nights he came home on time, I woke up better. Not healed, but better. When I told Mrs. Clark, her face changed. Just for a second, but I saw it. She closed the curtains, sat closer. Then she asked the question that cracked my world open. "Eleanor, do you trust your husband completely?" I laughed. Nervous. Defensive. Of course I did. He was distant, yeah. Irritated sometimes, sure. But dangerous. No way. She didn't argue. She just said one thing before I left. "Tomorrow night, don't take the pill." That night, my mind wouldn't shut up. I watched Gerald like I'd never watched him before. His hands. His eyes. The way he held the glass. Was I imagining things? Or had I been blind? The next night, when he handed me the milk and pill, I pretended to swallow it. I didn't. I hid it in my palm. Drank the milk. Turned my back. Heart pounding like it wanted out of my chest. When Gerald started snoring, I slipped out of bed and flushed the pill. Then I waited. Around midnight, the mattress shifted. Gerald got up. Quiet. Careful. I heard his footsteps going downstairs. Something inside me screamed. I followed him. I stayed in the shadows, barely breathing. Through the crack of the kitchen door, I saw him open a cabinet, the one with cleaning supplies. He took out a small bottle. No label. No markings. And then, he leaned over my favorite blue cup. The cup I used every morning. And dropped something into it. I stumbled back, shaking so hard I thought I'd fall. I crawled into bed and pulled the blanket over my head like a scared child. That night, the pain didn't come. Not like before. The next morning, I ran to Mrs. Clark's house like my life depended on it. Because deep down, I knew it did. Once you see the truth, you can't unsee it. After that night in the kitchen, nothing felt real anymore. The house I'd lived in for years suddenly felt like enemy territory. Every creak in the floor made my chest tighten. Every sound felt louder, sharper. And the scariest part, Gerald acted normal. Same voice, same routine, same fake calm, like nothing had happened. That's when I realized something terrifying. If I confronted him without proof, I wouldn't survive it. I went back to Mrs. Clark's place shaking so hard I could barely knock. When she opened the door and saw my face, she didn't ask questions. She pulled me inside and locked it behind us. I told her everything. The cabinet, the bottle, the blue cup. She didn't gasp, didn't cry. She nodded slowly, like she already knew what was coming next. We need proof, she said. Real proof. The kind no one can talk their way out of. She told me about her son, George, who lived in the city. He worked with cameras. Nothing fancy, but enough to catch what mattered. 2 days later, he showed up with a small camera and a calm face that made me feel, for the first time in years, that I wasn't crazy. George showed me how to use it, how to hide it, how to make sure it stayed unseen. We placed it high on a kitchen cabinet, hidden behind a plant. Pointed straight at the counter. That night, I didn't take the pill again. I pretended, smiled, played my role. My heart didn't slow down once. Around midnight, Gerald got up again. Same routine, same quiet steps, same cabinet. The camera caught everything. The next morning, after he left for work, I nearly collapsed pulling that camera down. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped it. George developed the footage at his mom's place. When the images appeared, there it was. Gerald, my husband, standing in our kitchen, adding something to my cup. No arguing with that. I felt something crack inside me. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a quiet break. Like something that had been holding me together finally gave up. Mrs. Clark looked at me and said the words I'd been avoiding. This is a crime, not a marriage problem. Not a misunderstanding. A crime. I didn't go home that night. Or the next. I stayed with Mrs. Clark, drinking water nonstop, trying to flush my body out. And slowly, I started to feel clearer. Stronger. That's when the pieces started clicking together. Gerald's late nights. His sudden coldness. The way he always handled my medicine himself. Something else was going on. George offered to follow him. I didn't go. I couldn't. I wasn't ready to see more truth. But George did. And when he came back, his face said everything before his mouth did. Gerald wasn't alone when he left work. He was with a woman. They drove out of town together. Stopped at a big house. The kind of house money buys. They walked in holding hands. Like they had nothing to hide. That's when I understood. I wasn't sick. I wasn't crazy. I was in the way. Now here's the part that still gives me chills. I didn't go to the police right away. Not yet. Because I needed one thing more. I needed him to say it. So I went back home. I cooked dinner like nothing was wrong. Wore a clean nightgown. Set the table. Smiled. I turned on a small recorder and hid it in my apron pocket. When Gerald walked in and saw me standing there, healthy, calm, his face drained of color. We sat down. We ate. We talked about nothing. Then I placed the bottle on the table. And I asked him one simple question. What is this? He tried to deny it. called me confused, said I was imagining things. That's when I laid the photos out in front of him. One by one, the room went silent. And then, he changed. His face went cold, empty, and he said the words I'll never forget. You weren't supposed to die fast. That was it. That was the moment I knew I'd won. Because he talked. He talked about the woman. About how getting rid of me was easier than divorce. About how no one would ever question a sick wife. I let him talk. Because the recorder was listening. When I finally stood up, he asked me what I was going to do. I looked him dead in the eyes and said, "We'll see." I walked straight out of that house and never slept there again. That same night, we went to the police. By morning, Gerald was in custody. The town exploded. People whispered, stared, judged. Some believed me, some didn't. But it didn't matter anymore. Because for the first time in 7 years, I was alive, and he couldn't touch me again. The moment Gerald was taken away, the town flipped overnight. Same streets, same houses, same people. But suddenly, everyone had an opinion. Some folks looked at me like I was made of glass. Others stared like I was a walking headline. Conversations stopped when I passed. Whispers followed me like shadows. The poor woman. I always knew something was off. She must have done something. Yeah, that last one hurt the most. Turns out, when a woman survives something ugly, people don't just want the truth, they want someone to blame. And blaming the victim is always easier than facing the monster. The police did their job. They searched the house, found the bottle, took statements. The evidence stacked up fast. Photos, recording, timeline, motive. There was no way out for Gerald. But the emotional damage, that didn't disappear with handcuffs. At night, I'd wake up shaking. Not from pain this time, but from memories. From the realization that the man I trusted with my life had been quietly trying to erase it. I kept asking myself the same question over and over. Why not just leave me? The answer came out later, and it was colder than I expected. Divorce would have ruined his image, his job, his future. A sick wife, dying quietly. That raised no questions. I wasn't just married to him. I was inconvenient. The trial came months later. Walking into that courtroom felt like walking back into the fire. Gerald wouldn't look at me. His lawyer tried to paint me as confused, emotional, unstable. Same old story. But facts don't care about excuses. The judge listened. The jury listened. And when the verdict came down, the room went dead silent. Guilty. Gerald was sentenced to prison for attempted murder. Just like that, 7 years of pain finally had a name. Justice. But here's the part nobody talks about. Justice doesn't automatically heal you. When the trial ended, I was young, broke, sick, and alone. The house was gone. The marriage was ashes. My health was fragile. My hometown felt like a cage. So I left. With one suitcase and Mrs. Clark by my side, I moved to the city. No plan. No safety net. Just the quiet decision that I was done letting fear decide my future. Recovery wasn't fast. Or easy. Years of poison had taken their toll. Doctors helped. Real doctors this time. The pain faded slowly. My strength came back piece by piece. I worked small jobs. Learned new skills. Started earning my own money for the first time in my life. And something wild happened along the way. I found myself again. Not the girl who married too young. Not the sick wife everyone pitied. But a woman who survived hell and kept walking. Years later, I met someone new. A good man. Not flashy. Not charming in that dangerous way. Just honest. Steady. Kind. The kind of man who listens instead of controls. Loving again was terrifying. Trust didn't come easy. But real love doesn't rush you. It waits. We built a life. Quiet, solid, safe. Something I never thought I'd have again. As for Gerald, prison caught up with him faster than karma ever could. He got sick behind bars. Never got out. Died forgotten. I didn't feel joy when I heard the news. Just closure. Because here's the truth people don't expect. Hate keeps you tied to the past. And I refuse to be tied to him anymore. Years later, I shared my story publicly. Not for sympathy, not for fame, but because silence protects the wrong people. And something incredible happened. Women reached out. From everywhere. Some recognized the signs. Some trusted their instincts. Some caught the truth before it was too late. Lives were saved. And that's when it hit me. The poison that was meant to end me became the reason others survived. Now, at my age, when I look back, I don't see myself as a victim. I see a woman who refused to disappear. So if you're listening to this and something feels off in your life, if your body is screaming while the world tells you you're fine, if your gut keeps whispering that something isn't right, listen to it. Your instincts aren't crazy. Your pain isn't imaginary. And your life is worth protecting. I didn't just survive. I lived. And nobody, not fear, not betrayal, not poison, got to decide my ending but me.